Good day, good night, and welcome to World Cup Today for Tuesday, June 5th. 9 days, Duane, 9 days before we see the first ball being kicked around between Russia and Saudi Arabia. Welcome to our brand new World Cup set. You see the map of the world behind me. We are going to Russia soon. In 9 days, we will actually see games on our TV. We're not actually going to Russia for real. Maybe one day, Duane, we'll go to the World Cup live. Maybe in 2026. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Maybe in 2026. Certainly that is the hope. We'll talk a bit about that in a minute. Hopefully in 3 days' time or 2 days' time, I guess now I'll get to see something that I've waited my entire life to see. But that's for hockey today, which yes. I may in fact do on Friday morning if they win the cup.
Duane is wearing his Capitals jersey in the corner of the brand new studio right here. You can see. And for good reasons, of course. But this is not hockey today. This is World Cup today. But congratulations on a big win for the Washington Capitals. We know that there's a lot of Washington Capitals fan in the world, in the soccer bubble for some reason. From Bo to Jonathan to Duane to others. I'm like, all right, guys, you guys enjoyed it. And Bo was there. So Bo Durer, if you want to follow one of our friends on social media, he's a big fan of soccer and other sports as well. Duane, today we're going to talk about Group E, a big group with some big heavy hitters. But before we start talking about Group E, you mentioned United 2026, Morocco. This decision will be taken on June 13, and 4 days ago, FIFA released their quadri-annual, I said it properly, quadri-annual report on bid inspections and 4.0 as a whole for United 2026 and 2.7 as a whole for Morocco.
10 out of 5. Friday afternoon, I sat madly refreshing my Twitter feed because for about 1 hour's time, Kevin, I thought that I might finally be watching Canada qualify for the World Cup, and it was always going to be that way with me refreshing some kind of internet feed.
True. There's no better way, Duane. If you've been following the history of Canadian soccer, that's how we used to watch games. We used to refresh like live blogs to know the score in the middle of Cyprus in the middle of the night with phone calls or weird guys in their bedrooms.
Yeah, well, no, exactly. I could tell 1,000 stories. Maybe one day we'll do that. But alas, it didn't turn out that way. The reason it could have been that is because there was a chance and there was a rumor that started out of Morocco that FIFA was in fact preparing to eliminate them from the ballot, which would have not actually technically made it necessarily 100% that the United bid would have won, even if Morocco had been removed from the bid. It would have meant that there just would have been two options on the bid vote, and that a second option would have been none of the above. And if it which still remains on the ballot, I think we should talk about that.
Well, if I was going to say, Duane, 2.7 out of 5, they failed. Right? They failed the inspection. The inspection is, you need to get 3, but the score of the inspection is not that important. It serves as a guidelines technically to the voting federations. Well, we all know how this works. It's more of a lobby, and you get federations on your side or against you. Those inspection reports are important, kind of, but it's more to give an overview to people who are not voting than to people who are voting.
Yeah. I mean, look, we've seen it in the Olympic bids as well, where you get the inspection report that comes out, and it really doesn't matter so much. I mean, it's the city I'm sitting in has bid for the Olympics on 2 occasions, in 1996 and for the 1996 Olympics and for the 2008 Olympics. And in both cases, their bid book was deemed to be the best one, the best technical bid out there, the best with all the facilities around it. In both cases, they lost to Atlanta in 96, obviously, to Beijing in 2008. It's not necessarily going to mean much, as you say. It might sway 1 or 2 votes that are on the fence. And I guess if you're a proponent of the United bid, and most of our listeners I suspect are, that might be how you can positively look at what happened on Friday. But if you we're hoping for an elimination of Morocco because you feel that Morocco is going to win the bid, perhaps unjustly, it was a bit disappointing because if you track my tracker, and again, if you go to the top of my Twitter feed, the pinned tweet I have is tracking declarations of support. And I have what I call the soft count on it. The soft count is all of the assumed votes. The assumed votes are Africa for Morocco and North America for the United bid. And then you add on to those votes from outside of those areas that have been publicly declared. That's what I call a soft count. That soft count currently stands at 72-52 for Morocco. So there is a lot of reason to suspect that this is Morocco's to lose. I am one of the few people, we are one of the few people that are reporting this way. A lot of the mainstream reporting still is calling this either the United bid as the favorite, which I don't know where they're getting the math from. I think that might just be perception, or that it's too close to call.
TSN wrote an interesting article just a few days ago saying in their count, United 2026 is ahead. Do they know something we don't, or do we know something they don't?
The only thing I can think of is that they are, I'm tracking pretty close. The only thing I can think of is that they are making assumptions that I am not. I am not assuming anything out of any of the non-Africa or North American bids that haven't publicly said something yet. And it maybe what TSN is doing, and I'll need to look at this article, but maybe what they're doing is they're looking at Western Europe bids and assuming they're going to North America. I think that's a dangerous assumption. I think truth be told, it's a dangerous assumption even to do what I'm doing, to think that CONCACAF is going to CONCACAF and CAF is going to CAF, because we've seen defections on both sides now.
Yeah, Dominica decided to go with Morocco, and there's other countries like this that are in CONCACAF that have decided to support the Moroccan bid because they believe it's a leverage point. They believe they can get something out of it, and I guess that's the problem, right? Nobody's voting on the World Cup bid for the true merit of the bid. Everyone's voting for it for, what are you going to give me for my vote? What am I going to get for my vote? What could I get for my vote? How do I monetize my vote for my federation, for my city, for my country, for my new stadium that I need, for maybe my brand new pool that I need too in my home backyard? Who knows? There's a lot of those questions in the past, and we all seen what happened with multiple bids. Qatar, which is probably the best example of a inspection report not meaning anything.
No, well, yeah, that inspection report was particularly damning in the sense that it essentially said that A, we can't play this World Cup in the summer when they say they're going to play it, and spoiler alert, they can't, they're not, and B, that this is dangerous even no matter when they play. I mean, even in November when this is eventually going to go off, and that is going to disrupt the calendar so much that I can't even comprehend it. But nonetheless, what's MLS going to do in 2022? They're going to have to move their entire schedule.
MLS Cup exactly at the same time as a World Cup final. Why not?
Well,
why not? Let's go. They say competition is good. It's going to split the eyes, right? It's going to split the audience, no? No one will watch the MLS Cup if the World Cup finals at the same time.
Well, FIFA doesn't allow other games to take place during the World Cup final either. That's for they allow some extensions and some, MLS is going to play games in that, but MLS is not stupid enough to schedule something directly against the final.
Well, you would hope. You would hope. I've seen MLS before, but you would hope that they would not do that.
Yeah, well, I've been at MLS games that have been scheduled directly against the Champions League final, so I guess. But anyway, no, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. But in particular, it's going to be interesting how a country like England handles it and whether or not it leads to permanent changes. There's been a lot of push for some kind of winter break. England doesn't want to break during their holiday season. Those Boxing Day, New Year's Day games, they really are valuable properties. So they might take a break for 3 or 4 weeks in early December, which might, be facilitated by the original need to break for 2022. That might be the one thing that pushes them to do that. So, look, we're talking about Qatar now. To get back to Morocco, there are some differences merit-wise in the North American bid versus the Moroccan bid that I think do allow the Moroccan bid to make some arguments that there are some football reasons to vote for it, particularly the travel. But overall, though.
Yeah, overall, you're right. Let's take a look. United bid score. Overall score, 4.0. Infrastructure, that's a subcategory. There's 6 categories in this one. Stadiums, 4.1. Team facilities. So the stadium will be the stadium played for the games. So BMO Field, Stade Olympique, and Commonwealth Stadium in Canada, and the like thousands of stadiums in the States too. Team facilities, which would be the training facilities or where the teams would train and have their equipment and those type of things. Example, the Stade Saputo at Montreal is a team facility, 3.7 out of 5. Accommodation, which is hospitality industry, hotels, rooms, is a 3.9 for United 2026. Transport, 4.3. Telecommunications, 4.0. I'm kind of surprised, only 4.0 for telecommunications. I guess old stadiums like Commonwealth and other stadiums like the Sort, oldest NFL stadium in United States, would explain this 4.0 versus a 5.0, because if you're looking at all the brand new stadiums being built, you have like fiber optic cable everywhere, Wi-Fi, so it should be higher, but I guess it's because of a few of the older stadiums that it's been brought down. And to finish off with the fan festival locations, a 3.6.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, there are dead zones in a lot of stadiums for Wi-Fi. That's probably what it relates to, but that's something that I think that if you look at the United bid, they'll fix. You're not as entirely certain that Morocco will have the time to fix details like that, simply because the stuff they have to bring up to standard if they win this bid are much more basic.
Well, here's the infrastructure for Morocco, Duane. Stadiums, 2.3. And let's directly compare now. Stadiums 2.3 for Morocco, it was 4.1 for United 2026. Team facilities, training facilities, 2.9 for Morocco. It was 3.7 for United. Accommodations, 2.6. Transport, 2.1. Telecommunications, 3.5. And fan festival locations, 3.2. Infrastructure-wise, it's not even a contest. And we're talking about what's not even said here is basically on the United side, everything's pretty much already built. And on the Morocco side, it was inspections of plans more than anything else. So there's a big disparity. And of course, the advantage goes to United 2026 in the infrastructure department.
Yeah, I mean, the basic get from your hotel to the stadium in time situation can't be guaranteed with the same level of certainty in Morocco as it can be in North America. And that has to do with a lot of things that are sort of peripheral to this, what the roads are like, right? Probably it'll get done, probably, but there's a probably involved. You know it would get done over here. It is the North American United bid is a no-brainer in terms of its ability to pull it off. No one doubts that there would be any hiccups here other than the travel. The travel is the big issue in terms of fatigue on the players not getting it done. The planes are going to fly, the trains are going to run. Yeah. But, yeah, it might be hard on the players. That's the question.
But the thing is people view the travel, and I'm just going to play devil's advocate here for a second. People view the continent and the travel aspect as big. You know, you can regionalize it. You don't have to go from LA to New York back to San Francisco. You can go from San Francisco to LA and have a game in, I don't know, Dallas after, or you go to Arlington, Texas for the final. You haven't traveled that much, and it's spread around many. So there's ways to regionalize the travel for 2026 where it won't be as impressive in the negative side. Like, it won't have a bad connotation to it because you can regionalize it. If you go, okay, you start in New York, you play your second game in LA and your third game in Chicago, of course it makes no sense. But that won't happen for sure either.
All right, real quickly, I'm looking up right now to see what Brazil's path in 1994 was to the World Cup final, where they famously won on Baggio's missed penalty. So let's have a quick look on that and see that. So Brazil started that tournament in Group B, and they played their first game. They played in Stanford, so they're in California.
So Stanford, San Francisco, so Northern California.
And then they stayed in San Francisco for their second game. Then they flew to Detroit. So there is some question there to play for their third game. Pontiac Silverdome was their third game of that. Skipping down to the group stage real quickly here, Kevin, I'm just scrolling.
No problem. I'm going to let Duane scroll here for a second. But yes, of course, Detroit is far from Northern California. If you're going by car or by train, it's about a 4-hour flight, 5-hour flight if you're depending on the wind. So it's not that bad either. It's not like you're flying in like a cargo plane. You're in first class too.
Yeah, no, precisely. Yeah, and well, okay. To continue with the Brazil's trip, they flew back to California, back to Stanford for their July 4th semifinal game, which was against the United States, 1-0 win there. Then they flew to Dallas to play the Netherlands in the quarterfinals. Played Sweden in Pasadena, which is Southern California, for the semifinals. Beat Sweden 1-0 there, and then won in Pasadena against Rose Bowl. So they played back-to-back games at the Rose Bowl.
So they spent,
Italy.
So they spent a week in Pasadena to finish the World Cup, and when it's really important, they had a week to recover and to prepare at the spot of the site of the final.
Their finalists, not looking at the group stage, but just looking at the knockout stage, played in Boston, well, Foxborough, New Jersey, so New York City, basically, the East Rutherford at the old Giant Stadium there, and then obviously they played the final in the Rose Bowl. So they were on the East Coast, basically, and they flew back across and played the final in California. So, yeah, they were basically putting these teams in areas. They're now in Brazil's situation. They kind of were a team that they were trying to, they marketed the entire 1994 World Cup around Brazil. So, yeah, they were getting a little bit more of a showcase. Although that said, they were still mostly in California.
Yep. And I think there's a very high probability that if United 2026 gets the World Cup, that we'll see a similar placement of teams for the games. But the thing is, this is a 48 teams World Cup. So you have more teams, which means you can spread them a bit more and have them stay locally a bit more too, because you have pockets of teams and groups, and you have some base in Canada, some base in the United States, some base in Mexico, and you're not going to play one game in Toronto, second game in Mexico City, and third game in LA. Come on. So yeah, we'll have that part. Let's just finish with the score of the bid by looking at the commercial side, which means the money side, which means it weighs a lot more than the rest in this decision or in this report. Commercial side for United 2026 is a bit interesting. Organizing costs, 2.0 out of 5. Media and marketing, 4.9. Basically, Twitter, Facebook, and everything, they're based here. So that's why that's 4.9 for media and marketing. And ticketing and hospitality. And by the way, remind me in a few minutes to talk to you about tickets. There's a lawsuit by FIFA, and I want to talk to you about it. But ticketing and hospitality, 5.0. This is for United 2026. Commercial now for Morocco. Organizing costs, 3.0. Media and marketing, 4.6. Ticketing and hospitality, 2.4. When they say organizing costs, does it mean that the closest to 5 is because it's going to be more expensive? Because if that is the case, it makes sense that it's 3.0 for Morocco.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. That is the one area that the United bid did not score in the best range, too, right? Well, there's 3 areas that they didn't score in the best range. That was one of them. And it's going to cost money to have these things anywhere. The other side of it, though, of course, and this would be in that sort of factored in other ways, is I'm just going to name some attendances here to you. These are the round of 16 attendances for 1994. 60,246, 53,121, 60,277, 90,469. I could go on. There was a 60, another 80 and a 70 in there as well, and then one more 55. So you can't match that. You just simply can't match that anywhere else in the world. It is a profit-making opportunity, but that said, this vote is going to come down to the politics of it. And if you go to my pinned track, Kevin, I'm not too sure where TSM was getting its numbers, but I certainly think that this, at the very best scenario for World Cup for United, is that this will be close to a 110 to 100 kind of vote.
Yep, it will be a very, very close vote. And we'll keep this in mind. Before we take a break and we talk about the Group E and its composition, Duane, I talked about ticketing for the World Cup. FIFA has deposited a lawsuit in Europe versus the website Viagogo, which is a ticket resale website, because there was some fear that fans were taken advantage of, and it wasn't a fair way to get those resales. And this resale vendor is not an accredited one, is not official one, and we've seen this many times before. Fake tickets for the World Cup and fans getting taken advantage of with crazy amount of money. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars to attend, example, the World Cup final, and you go to the ticket entrance, you give your ticket, and they scan like, sir, I'm going to ask you to leave. This is not a real ticket. You got scammed, and guess what? You don't have an inheritance for your kid anymore because you spent it all on a fake ticket. Yeah, I'm glad in a way that we're seeing FIFA take some steps, but I hope it's not some steps like the 4 big leagues in North America did, which is have their backdoor dealing with the resales agency taking a cut on both sides of the sales of the ticket. I don't know what you think about it.
I am so split when it comes to the resale stuff because I use resellers sometimes to get tickets at much lower costs than what they would cost me from a box office because the demand is not as high as what they set the prices at, and that benefits me in that case. So I'm a hypocrite if I don't acknowledge that. But at the same time, when you look at major events like or even just popularity, when you're in a city, you can get priced out pretty quick, and it's a dangerous slippery slope to go down if you're the fan bases. I would far rather they set their prices at the fair market value and then do work to avoid these tickets being resold from above the value that they're set at and actually enforce the laws. Like, for instance, in the country that we're in, or at least in Ontario anyway, it is illegal to sell a ticket above face value, but it happens all the time.
Here too, but have you ever been next to a venue? And when I say venue, I don't mean just sports. I mean concert venue, an arena with a hockey game, just a park with a soccer game that's popular. You're going to hear those words really often. Tickets.
Buying, selling.
Buying, selling tickets. Buying tickets, selling tickets. Yeah, I guess it's part of our culture, but you're right. Those laws have, from my experience, never been enforced unless there's an amount of people that really get taken advantage of. And this is what the law is. You can't really sell tickets for way more than they're supposed to. And anyways, so I think that's interesting. And you can find that article on the New York Times and the Guardian today that are talking about how FIFA is suing Viagogo. And we'll see the ramifications of it. We have friends having tickets to the World Cup from legal ways, and we have no people that found some in the illegal ways too. I guess if you really want to go, you'll find a way to go. And I guess there's no perfect way to do so, but the World Cup is one of the rare events, just like the Olympics, where people from around the world will travel. Heck, people will travel for friendlies, like people from Peru, 19,000 of them traveled to Europe for a friendly. Yeah, exactly. People will travel for those type of games. And, well, man will man, and when I say man, I mean human. So human will human, and we'll try to make a profit off people's passion.
For sure. I mean, look, and as I said a minute ago, like I've known people that have been to Summer Olympics, and one of the things that they really enjoyed about it is going to the resale part, like in the middle of the Olympic area, the Olympic fan areas. There was inevitably like resale areas where you could go and just go, what do you got for today? And you're gonna watch swimming today, or you're gonna watch handball tomorrow. And it was kind of a fun way to discover different sports, but that was something that was set up through a resale means. And I just wish, I don't know, I'm very ambivalent about ticket reselling because, as I said, people can get taken advantage of pretty easily, and it does, I think, artificially, because the scalpers, they sweep up the tickets. They have means, they have the ability, they have the time to go in and just get thousands of tickets that we can't get, and then suddenly they push the value up.
Because they got good laptop, good connections, and great numbers to call in and Ticketmaster and reserve all the hundreds of lines and get all the tickets. Exactly. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Group E. World Cup today, live daily during the 2018 FIFA World Cup. Duane Rollins and myself will give you our perspective of the World Cup 10 minutes after the end of the first game of the day, live on our YouTube page, youtube.com/sports podcasting network, where you will be able to catch all the shows we do live. And if you want to find us on podcast, we're available anywhere you get your podcasts. Tell a friend. We have some contests coming. You want an Orlando City jersey signed by the entire team? You want a a soccer ball signed by Nacho Piatti and the rest of the Montreal Impact team? Or maybe you're more an Italian fan and, it's going to be a difficult summer for you, Italy not in the World Cup and all. Well, maybe I have what you need. Do you want an Italy national team ball signed by the maestro himself, signed by Andrea Pirlo? Well, you can get all of those great memorabilia by liking our page, tagging a friend, and sharing our post. And we're back, Duane. Which one would you take? Would you take the Orlando City jersey? Would you take the Nacho Piatti ball? Or would you take a classic Pirlo signed ball?
I'm going to have to go with Pirlo in this case. This is the world star. Although, MLS the jersey, it's a nice little jersey too. I'm actually looking at this one. It is an authentic jersey, not game worn, but an authentic jersey that is here. It's got the crest on and all that sort of good stuff there. It was signed by the entire starting lineup before the TFC game that they played recently. So if you're looking for whose signatures are on it, just go back and got some players that played in World Cup that would have their John Hancock on that signature.
Sasha Kleiston on there, among others. Group E. Duane, it's starting to be serious now. We're getting towards the end of the groups. We have Brazil, Switzerland, Costa Rica, and Serbia. And for CONCACAF members, for our listeners that are present in CONCACAF, Costa Rica, of course, a lot of MLS presence there. But you got some former MLS players as well in Switzerland with Blair Zamali, former player of the Montreal Impact.
And Zamali, there's a blast from the plow. Well, it seems like the past. It wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago. And you know what? He was right. Everything he was saying last year was true. We sucked at practice. And yeah. Anyways, back to Zamali. He'll be playing in Europe. He's Clement Diop is the only other player for Montreal to make a World Cup squad as a backup goalkeeper for Egypt. No, Iran, I think. Anyways, doesn't matter.
There you go. This is Group E, but it might as well be called Group B, and because it is obviously Brazil's group, and Brazil is probably maybe one of the top 2 or 3 intriguing storylines heading into this World Cup, simply because, well, I shouldn't say the way the last one ended. They did play a third place game, but simply because the way that the last one ended spiritually for them in that 7-1 loss to Germany at home. One of the most insane, surreal times I've ever had watching sports in my life. This was Brazil getting its butt handed to it 7-1. I've seen 7-1 games before. I've seen obviously an 8-1 game before, as we all know all too well.
Yeah.
They happen, but Brazil? No, that doesn't happen to Brazil. They're Brazil. It was like the great myth slaying thing of all time. It was one of the most surreal, as I said, moments I've ever seen. And because of that, and their form's been great since. I mean, they really did turn it around pretty quickly. They really did.
They were good then too. They had one bad game. Not even. They had like one bad 60 minutes. And it was 7 goals in. Neymar played amazing before that. Speaking of Neymar, slowly coming back to form. Scored a goal in a friendly a few days ago. Wasn't pushing 100%. And still feels, we don't talk about Neymar a lot. Neymar, the way he expresses himself, the way he's honest, and I'm not used to this, but I'm starting to like it. A lot of millennials are not, and when I say millennials, I don't necessarily mean millennials. Millennials means athletes that are playing now, that are like from 20 to 30. They have a certain way of not being afraid to be vulnerable, and that for me is a positive for society and is positive for those athletes. But example, DeMar DeRozan talking about mental health issues, and you have a Neymar almost saying the same thing, saying, look, this injury has scared me. I was scared before I stepped back onto the pitch this week that it would get worse. I had to trust my physios, trust my body, but I still had this big feeling of not wanting to make it worse and not missing a World Cup for my country. And if you go back to when he scored that goal in Sao Paulo, and the entire city, like not the stadium, you could hear the crowds miles away were going nuts for that goal. And that way of describing his role and the importance of this World Cup and his presence and not being afraid to show his vulnerability, for me, is fascinating, and it's a positive sign. But Yeah, it's interesting when it gives you a mindset, a bit of a window into his mindset and mindset of Brazil before going into the World Cup.
No, precisely, and Neymar had so much pressure in the last World Cup, so much pressure, and did he fail to live up to it? I don't think he failed to live up to it, but obviously that entire team had that terrible day. But then I don't think that we should also forget, if we're going to blame them for that, I don't think we should also forget what happened a year later when Neymar, as the centerpiece of the Olympics, managed to do what Brazil had never done before and lead the Brazilian Olympic team to the gold medal after a slow start there too. They overcame more adversity in that tournament, and that it wasn't a complete revenge. It would be like the Canadian men's hockey team losing in 2010 and then winning the world championship the next year at home. It's not quite the same thing.
It's not redemption, but it's at least a Band-Aid.
Yeah, and I'm sure it would have been played up as a redemption story here. But okay, Kevin, on November 16th, 2015, Peru famously beat Brazil 2-0. It was, there was partying in the streets of Lima that night, right? That was maybe the result that ultimately, if you track it forward,
gave them the confidence to where they are today going to the World Cup. Yeah,
exactly. From that point forward, I'm going to give you Brazil's results. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
They defeated Uruguay 4-1 at home. They defeated Paraguay 3-0 on the road. Defeated Ecuador 2-0 on the road. Tied Brazil 1-1, Colombia 1-1. Bolivia 0-0. That was a road game, so Bolivia is very difficult to play on the road because of the altitude there. So that's not a terrible result at all for them. 3-0 over Chile, 3-0 over Russia, 1-0 over Germany, 2-0 over Croatia. They are undefeated since that loss to Peru in 2015. That is, I believe, 11 games. I'd have to go back and count it, but that is a remarkable run of form. And anyone who is not, counting them amongst the favorites is stuck on 7-1, and I think that we should now start just like here, where there comes a point where you have to go, okay, it's part of the history, but it's no longer part of the narrative. I think that the 7-1 is part of Brazil's history, but I don't think it's part of the narrative anymore.
No, it makes a lot of sense, and Brazil obviously is the top seed of this group, in our opinion, and in fact, it's just the 8th team in this group. But Switzerland, that's where it's become interesting, is when you're trying to handicap the rest of the group. You got a Switzerland, a Costa Rica, and a Serbia. Costa Rica famously went to the quarterfinals of the World Cup in 2014, their best result ever. And we've seen the rise of a few players. Of course, few players got themselves a nice career in North America, but I guess it didn't pan out in the best way. We talk about James Rodriguez for Colombia and his not working for Real Madrid in the last 4 years. A player with a similar path but with different scale, maybe, Duane, is Johan Venegas for Costa Rica. Had a great World Cup. He made himself a name, especially in North America. Got himself a job in Montreal. Got himself traded to Minnesota. It didn't work out, and now he's back with Saprissa in Costa Rica. Still made the squad. But the Los Ticos might be one of my top 5 teams to follow in this World Cup, just because of familiarity, too. We know half the team. We're used to seeing them play week in, week out.
I will cheer for Costa Rica in this World Cup for sure. I did in the last World Cup. They are the CONCACAF nation that you sort of, if you're Canadian, if you're not American or Mexican or any other one, I mean, if you're talking about us here, you're going to gravitate to them a little bit more because they're a little more likable than the other two that you call your rivals. I think realistically, if you look at their possibilities in this World Cup, the quarterfinals were an incredible result. I actually compare them a lot to the U.S. I think that Costa Rica and the Americans have a lot of similarities in the sense of sort of where they are in world football and how they're a little underestimated often and how they overachieved and got a great result in the World Cup, both cases a quarterfinal, how in that quarterfinal they were probably unlucky to not even go further. But what happened to the United States following their quarterfinal run? Well, they got the draw against Italy. That was pretty good in 2006. Other than that, it was a pretty bad World Cup for them. So I wouldn't necessarily expect Costa Rica to go equally as deep. And if you think that they're the number 2 team in this group, you're underestimating both Serbia and Switzerland. Switzerland, who almost every time it gets into a World Cup, almost always goes to the round of 16, where they almost always lose. But certainly a solid team. And
it's a different Switzerland. It's not your big brother Switzerland with more a defensive mindset. They're not as neutral as they used to be. I know it's an easy Swiss joke. But look, Xhaka, Shaqiri, Zamali, You got yourself a little bit of firepower in the offense here. You got yourself some more attacking flair than Switzerland has had in a while. Yes, 4 years ago they had a bit of the same thing, but experience as well. But you have players playing at a high level, and won't be surprised at all if a Shaqiri, a Shaka, or Zamali get themselves a few goals and a surprise result in the group. Can they draw? Can they have a draw with Brazil? I wouldn't be that shocked. Can Switzerland beat Costa Rica and beat Serbia? Yeah, on any given day, any of those three teams could beat the other one. In my mind, I would handicap maybe Switzerland, Costa Rica, Serbia. Serbia for unknown reasons. I'm not necessarily familiar with Serbia as much as I would be if it was another team. But Serbia qualified for the World Cup out of Europe. And just that should be enough for you to consider a team having possibilities of getting out of the group. Look, Italy didn't qualify, right? And it's the easy example you're going to say. But just to qualify out of Europe, you're talking about a 2-year process that every few months you have an important game. And that has to be taken into consideration. So that being said, still don't know how to handicap this group outside of Brazil one. And then it's a bit of a crapshoot.
Yeah, I think Serbia is the fourth team in this. Just, you're right that getting there is an accomplishment. I sort of wrapped them in my head, partly because of geography with Slovenia, Slovakia, which are a couple other clubs that have teams that have debuted in the World Cup in recent editions and both sort of done pretty decently in the group stage, but ultimately didn't get out. I think Serbia is probably going to be much the same because they have much of the same sort of infrastructure and culture around the club. Obviously, they're different nations. I'm not trying to claim that they aren't.
Of course, but Serbia has a lot of potential, though. They have a high ceiling. Why? Because you look at Croatia. You look at Croatia where they were before, and since joining the world stage, how they've evolved and how they've managed to develop great players, a.k.a. Luka Modric, and then build the squad around him and have a team that any given year is talked about being in the top 10 of the best soccer nations in the world. Serbia, when they look at Croatia, they look at the possibilities, at the infrastructures, and everything in place. I'm like, yeah, we can do that. We can use that blueprint and replicate it. And 20 years from now, when we have the same amount of experience at the world stage as a Croatia, we can be at the same level. And we all know Eastern European love to play soccer and are great at soccer. You mix all those things together, Serbia in about 2 World Cup could be a dark horse like Croatia is.
Yeah, they did probably have the weakest group in European qualifier. They were in Ireland's group. For those that follow that country there, you'll remember them. And they did get a 1-0 win in Ireland to sort of salt that away for them, to what they were battling with the Irish, basically, to get to the down. If you want to look at the results of the last few, a decent 1-0 loss to Chile, which Chile, although not in the World Cup, is obviously one of the world's best teams. Serbia beat Nigeria 2-0. That's a decent win as well. Result as well. Lost 2-1 to Morocco. That's before that you're into World Cup qualifying. So those are your results since they qualified. As I say, I think that they're the fourth. I do lean towards Switzerland, both because of their past history at this. They do tend to find ways to get results, and as you say, because they do have some higher end talent. That's nothing to take away from Costa Rica, but it's hard to follow up on a result like that quarterfinal. And again, I draw that comparison to the U.S. from 02 to 06, and similar teams. The expectations were through the roof in 06 for them. They went and, fell flat in that first game, managed to somehow hold on to that draw against Italy with 9 men. One of the strangest results I've ever watched. If mid-memory serves, go back and watch that one too. I mean, Jimmy Conrad played in it, for God's sakes. Like, think about that for a minute.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah. Was Lawless there? No, he was already inside. Anyways. Yeah, it's fascinating too. And we'll have more, obviously. So let's recap our Group E finishing order after the group stage in our mind. Brazil, Switzerland, Costa Rica, and Serbia. So unfortunately, Los Ticos, according to Sports Podcast and Network and World Cup today, will not make it out of the group. You will have Brazil winning the group and Switzerland moving on to the round of 16.
Fair enough. And if Jimmy Conrad's listening, he was a guest on It's Called Football with one of my favorite interviews ever. We love you, Jimmy, but I think even you would agree that you're not amongst the best 11 all time in the world or something.
What? He's not? Conradino is not real? Like, that's not a real thing? He's not Brazilian?
He's a great interview, though. We should try and get him on the show.
Oh, he's a great guy. Like, I remember 2016 MLS Cup. He was behind me in the quote-unquote press box. Which basically was a row in the stands at minus 15 degrees Celsius. And I never had as much fun watching a game with someone commenting behind me as having Jimmy Conrad there. That was quite the enjoyable day. But speaking of enjoyable day, wish every single one of you a nice day. You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. Thanks for all the listeners. You've been over 12,000 to listen to us over the last 6 days, and we thank you very much for your listen. You can give us a follow on social media at Soccer Today SPN, at 24th Minute for Duane, at Kev Laramee for myself. Podcast versions of the show are available anywhere you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe, and that way you will always get our brand new shows as soon as they are available. And of course, always available at sportspodcastingnetwork.com. And as always, until tomorrow, I'm Kevin Laramee, and I'm wishing you a great soccer